Good morning. Today is Sunday, the 24th day of Kislev. And today we begin the actual first chapter in Tanya. What a perfect day to begin. The day before Hanukkah. Tonight we're lighting the first candle of Hanukkah, the first light. And the light of Hanukkah represents bringing the light into the darkness. You see, unlike the menorah in the Holy Temple that was lit every day, that menorah we used to light and during the daytime. But the Hanukkah candle we light at night after it gets dark, which represents the same thing with the Hasidus. The teaching of the Tanya is about teaching the lights into the darkness, bringing the light into the darkness, meaning into our physical, material world to bring and see godliness through the teachings of the Hasidus. So we were discussing before we started the recording, what is the name Tanya? The book is called the Book of the Tanya, very common name. We call it the Book of Tanya. Where does this name come from? And the truth is, honestly, I don't know the real answer. Who came up with the name? We do have answers why we call it Tanya. But really, the Alter Rebbe, when he wrote this book, and he gave it to print, eventually, he called it Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of the Beinanim, the book of the intermediary. And he called it also another name, Likutei Amarim, a collection of sayings. That's with his humility. The Alter Rebbe, by the way, never put his name on the book. So why is it called the Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of intermediary? This you will find out as we go along in this book, because the Alter Rebbe will teach us what does it mean, an intermediary, and our goal is to be an intermediary. Because there is a tzaddik, there is a Beinani, and a Rasha. The righteous, the wicked, and the intermediary, and the wicked one. To be a righteous, the Alter Rebbe will explain in his determination, his level, what it means righteous is a very high level. And that is really not something that is expected of everyone. And that's why the book is called the Book of Intermediary. If we can reach that level, we're doing good. But yet the book is called Tanya. What does it mean, Tanya? What is the translation of the word? Tanya means we have learned. It's an Aramaic word. And the Alter Rebbe begins with this book, begins with the word Tanya, B'Soif Peirei Gimel Danido. We have learned in the end of the chapter 3 of the tractate Nida. So we have learned. We call it Tanya. Is also, so number one, the message is, you got to learn. You got to keep learning. When you learn, you'll get somewhere. You can't just be passive. Always try. This is the idea of Chabad, the movement of that the Alter Rebbe established. Chachma Bina Das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Keep learning. Tanya also has the same letters as the word Eisan, like Eitan, which means strong. It says with a part of the neshama, the soul, that is the deepest level connected with Hashem, is called Eisan. That means that every Jew has that part of the neshama, and this book, Tanya, reveals that part of the neshama. When you learn the Tanya, you connect with that essence of your soul, because it reveals the strength of your neshama, and thereby you'll be able to overcome all type of challenges. So we still need an answer. Maybe someone will come up with an answer. Anyone who watches this video can answer me. Who came up with this? Who was the first one to come up with this name? I'm not sure. We have to find out. Maybe it's some Hasidim, maybe it's one of the Rebbes. I'm not sure. We have to look it up. If you find an answer, please post a comment. So we're gonna start inside the first chapter of Tanya. Says the Alter Rebbe, Tanya b'seif peri gimel denida. We have learned in the tractate Nida, end of chapter 3, Mashbin oisei, an oath is administered to him. This, the Gemara in Nida says about the oath that is administered to each and every Jew. Every person that is born, before he's born, is being administered an oath. What is the oath that is administered? Tehi tzadik ve'al tehi rasha. Be righteous and be not wicked. That's one part of the oath. In other words, this is how the soul is prepared to come down to this world. It should be righteous and don't be wicked. And then the other part is, and even if the whole world, judging you by your actions, they tell you that you are righteous, regard yourself as wicked. Okay? So, number one, we need to understand also, what does it mean that the soul is being administered an oath? A soul, are we talking, the human being is made out of two souls. You have the animal soul and you have the godly soul. So which part of the soul is being administered an oath as it goes into life? It should be righteous. Is it godly soul? The godly soul doesn't need that. Godly soul is godly. The godly soul is fully godly. It doesn't need anything that to suggesting that the godly soul is not going to want to be righteous. Of course not. Is it the animal soul? Animalistic soul. The animalistic soul doesn't get to the person until the person is born. This is an oath that is being administered before the person is born. And the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, explains that the word mashbin, I say, that is being administered an oath, has also the meaning of masbi'in. The shin can be read as a sin. Masbin means is being satiated. That means the person before he's born is being satiated with the power, the strength, the ability to become righteous, to be righteous. Okay? So, the Rebbe begins this in analyzing this statement. And the Alter Rebbe asks a question, number one, we need to understand that none of his perik beis ve'alti rasha b'fnei atzmecha. This statement seems to be contradictory to another statement that it says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that in Avis tractate, chapter 2, it says in Avis, this is the ethics of the fathers, it says, do not be wicked in your own estimation. So here it says that part of the oath, we tell the person, you should consider yourself a wicked person. And here it says clearly, do not consider yourself a wicked person. So this is one question. Although there's different answers to this question, the Alter Rebbe takes it further. And he says, V'gam, furthermore, if a person considers himself wicked, he will be grieved at heart and depressed. What happens to your child if you tell them, oh, you're bad, you're a loser, you're this, you're that? In today's psychology, we know you don't, this is a no-no, you don't do this to the child. So if a person convinces himself, saying, I'm wicked, I'm bad, where's it going to lead you? What's going to happen to you? You're going to get depressed. I'm bad, I'm hopeless. And what's the problem with that? Then he will consequently not be able to serve God joyfully and with a contented heart. Part of serving Hashem has to be Hashem b'simcha. We serve Hashem. It has to be with joy, with happiness. Can't do it if you think on yourself as a wicked person. So the Alter Rebbe takes it to the other level, other end now, says, wait, okay, maybe I have a solution to it. The Mishnah says, that Brisa says that I need to consider myself wicked. And at the same time, I can't allow this to interfere in my service of God, b'simcha, with joy. So you know what? I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm wicked, but I'm going to do whatever I need to do anyway. Alter Rebbe says here, there's another problem. If you're going to become so careless, because what are you saying? I'm wicked. Why? Because I'm doing these bad things. And you're going to say, who cares? I'm going to keep being happy. That means then the problem is you're going to be careless about the not good things, about not that you're doing. That's what Alter Rebbe says. And while if his heart will not be at all grieved by his self-appraisal, says, I'm wicked, but who cares? He may be led to irreverence, God forbid, by such an attitude with sin perturbing him not at all. That I sinned, but who cares? Sin's supposed to bother you. But in the same time, you cannot become depressed. So where's the solution? So the answer to this question, the Alter Rebbe is going to answer later on in the Tanya. And Alter Rebbe begins with a systematic explanation and understanding. First, what does it mean, a tzaddik? What does it mean, a rasha, a wicked person, a righteous person, a beinoni, and so on? So he begins with what we find different explanation and divisions in the Gemara. We find in the Gemara there are 5 different types, 5 distinct types. There is tzaddik v'toivloi, tzaddik v'raloi, rosha v'toivloi, rosha v'raloi, beinoni. There is a righteous man who prospers. There is a righteous man who suffers. A wicked man who prospers, and a wicked man who suffers, and an intermediate man, a beinoni. The Gemara explains, what does it mean? A righteous man who prospers. The Gemara says, because what's the idea? Why does this particular righteous man prosper? Because he's a complete tzaddik. So being is a complete tzaddik, so he can prosper in this world as well. The Gemara explains the righteous man who prospers is the consummate, the complete tzaddik. Tzaddik v'ralo tzaddik she'enei gamo. A righteous man who suffers is the imperfect tzaddik. He's not so perfect. That's why he has some sufferings. That's the way the Gemara explains it. Now the Alter Rebbe brings now another interpretation of what does it mean, a tzaddik v'raloi, a righteous man that suffers. Says, it brings the explanation of the Zohar. Literally, the word v'raloi means it's bad to him. And the way the Gemara explained it is that he suffers. Here, from the Zohar, there they interpret the words v'raloi, the bad to him, in a different way. It says the tzaddik v'raloi is actually a description of what kind of tzaddik he is. It's not talking about what happens to the tzaddik, but it is a description of what type of tzaddik he is. So it says, Uberaya mehimne parshas mishpatim, in the Raya mehimne, which is part of the Zohar, in the portion of mishpatim, Pirish, it is explained, tzaddik v'ra'aloi, she'ara shaboy kofef l'toi v'chulu. The righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. So again, the word ra'lo is not suffers. Ra, the bad, loi is to him. That's a tzaddik v'ra'loi. Meaning that this is such a tzaddik that he has a very hidden evil part, but it's subservient to him. He's in complete control, even of his thoughts and everything. Now it brings out in the Gemara, in the end of Brachas, it says something else. Tzadikim, yetzer toiv sheiftam. Rashoim, yetzer hara sheiftam. Beinanim, zeh v'zeh sheiftam. In the end of Brachas, the Gemara states that the righteous are judged, meaning they are motivated and ruled by the good nature. The Rashoim, they are judged by the evil nature. It says Rashoim, it says in another place, Hein birshus libam. They are in possession of their hearts. They follow their hearts. Instead of following the brain, the intellect, the understanding, they follow the heart. That means the heart controls them. So the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, controls their nature, controls them. And Beinanim, the intermediate person, is Zeh v'Zeh Sheiftam. The intermediate man are judged by both the good and the evil nature. So we have all kind of differences, explanations. There's a tzaddik, there's a rasha, there's a beinani. So the Alter Rebbe begins with, we need to understand what is the beinani, what is the intermediate person. And it brings a statement from the Talmud. It says, one of the great sages by the name Rabbah, and he spoke to his students when he explained to them what is a tzaddik, what is a beinani. He says, you want to know what is a beinani? Look at me. I am a beinani. Rabbah declared, I, for example, am a beinani. Abaye told him, Abaye was one of his great students, and he told him, how could you say such a thing? You are a beinani. Master, you make it impossible for any creature to live. What does that mean? He's telling him, if you're a beinani, that means you're the greatest tzaddik we know in this world. You're the sage of the generation. And if you consider yourself a beinani, an intermediate, that means what is the rest? What are we? What are the rest of us? We are all wicked. So you don't live life. It's impossible for any creature to live. Why? It says tzaddik yasod olam. The world must have a tzaddik to be founded, to be stable. If there's no tzaddik in the world cannot exist. So Rabbi, if you're not a tzaddik, then we're all dead. So, now the Alter Rebbe says, we need to clarify all of the above, the differences, what is the tzaddik, what is the rasha, what is the beinani, and so on. Another thing we need to understand, there's another statement that Job, said, and it's quoted in the Gemara tractate Baba Basra, chapter 1. It says, He says, Lord of our universe, you have created righteous men, you have created wicked men. And the question is, how could Eos make such a statement? We know that righteous and wicked is not something that God creates. God creates us humans. We choose to be righteous or wicked. So why does it say, you have created righteous, you have created wicked? And it brings further to make this question clear. It says, "Ve'otzadik ve'rasha lo ka'amar." For he does not decree which person are to be righteous and wicked. Where is this? This is a statement. It says, when a child is born, there's an angel that says, this child that is born, will it be wise? Will it be not wise? All kind of question what the child would be. One thing it doesn't ask. It doesn't make the statement whether the child will be righteous or wicked, because that's not up to us, it's up to the child. So how could Eov make this statement and say, Master of the universe, you have created tzaddikim, you have created Rashaim. So again, these questions will also be answered later. Well, once we get clarification, what it means a tzaddik, what it means a rasha, what it means a beinoni, all these questions will be clarified. But further, the Alter Rebbe begins now another question. We need to understand exactly what does it mean a beinoni? What is the level of a beinoni, of an intermediate? At what point can a person be considered a beinoni? That's what it says. We must also understand the essential nature, the mahus, of the rank of the beinoni. So the Alter Rebbe is going to consider different options, which he right away says that that cannot be the case. He considers a few options where we could say maybe this is a beinoni, intermediate, because we know what a righteous is. Righteous is a good person. We know what a wicked person. But a beinoni, intermediate, at what point does a person consider the beinoni? So he says, number one option that he disqualifies, he says, for surely we cannot say that a beinoni is one who is half virtuous and half sinful. Why not? Shem Kain, if you would say that this is a beinoni, one who has half and half, how could we just made a statement that Rabbah, the great sage, when he spoke to his students and he told them, you want to know who is a beinoni? Look at me. If he considered himself a beinoni, certainly we cannot say that a beinoni has half sins and half mitzvahs, because Rabbah certainly didn't do any sins. Venoida, and the Alter Rebbe says further, we know about the great level of Rabbah. He says, the leposik pumya megirse acha afilu malach hamavis lo yochel lishlit bay. It is known that his mouth never ceased studying the Torah, so much so that even the angel of death, had no dominion over him. The description that the angel of death couldn't take his life, because when a person is really connected with the Torah study, the angel of death has no power over you. He has to detract them at one point, and then he can take his life. So the angel of death had problems taking Rabbah's life. That's how great he was, constantly studying Torah. So certainly we cannot, and yet he considered himself, mistakenly so, because Abaye proved to him, he told him, no, Rabbi, you're making a mistake, you're not a beinoni. But how could he make this mistake even to think that he's a beinoni? If a beinoni is half mitzvahs and half averos, so certainly that is not a beinoni. How then could he make a mistake, considering that half his deeds were sinful, God forbid? Another question the Alter Rebbe asks. Again, at one point, does a person consider the beinoni? Let's say if you do a small sin. So he says, furthermore, when can a person be considered the beinoni? For at the time that one sins, until he repents, he is deemed a complete wicked. Person goes against God, even if it's a small thing. You go against God, at that moment, until the person repents, is considered wicked. So he's not a beinoni. So what happens? Maybe you did the sin, and then you say, okay, I feel bad, I do teshuvah. You're also not a beinoni. Then you're a tzaddik, you're righteous. That's what it says. And even if he was sinful and then repented, thus ceasing to be wicked, he is deemed a complete righteous. So he's not a beinoni. He's not an intermediate. So then the Alter Rebbe considers another option. Maybe a beinoni is one who doesn't violate a biblical law, maybe one who violates a small, light rabbinical law. So the Alter Rebbe says that it also is not true. Because even if you violate a rabbinical law, is also a person considered wicked. Even if one even he who violates a minor prohibition of the rabbis is termed the wicked. As it is stated in the Talmud, Yavamas, chapter 2, and the first chapter of Nida. So yet again, Alter Rebbe considers yet another option. Maybe who is considered a Beinoni? The one who he didn't commit a sin, but he sees somebody else sinning, and he doesn't stop him. He doesn't rebuke him. Says the Alter Rebbe says that also, if a person does not do what is in his power to stop another Jew from doing a sin, he's also called wicked. So again, he's not a Beinoni. Moreover, even he, who himself does not sin, but has an opportunity to forewarn another against sinning and fails to do so, is termed wicked in Shavuot chapter 6. So once again, another option Alter Rebbe considers maybe one who doesn't commit a sin, but he avoids doing a mitzvah, a positive commandment. Maybe that's a Beinoni. The Alter Rebbe says no, that also is even more so a terrible thing if you can do a mitzvah and don't do it. All the more so he who neglects any positive law which he is able to fulfill. For example, for instance, whoever is able to study Torah and doesn't do so. To whom our sages have applied the verse, because he has despised the Lord, the word of the Lord, which means the Torah, that soul shall be utterly cut off. So we see it's not considered a Beinoni at all. It is thus plain that such a person is called wicked more so than he who violates a prohibition of the sages. So what is the conclusion there for? Says the Alter Rebbe, we must say, Al kochoch ha-beinoni ein bo yafilu oven bittul Torah. This being so, we must conclude that a Beinoni is not guilty even of a sin of neglecting the Torah study. Which, by the way, the Talmud says this is one of the things that is impossible a person not to violate. It's very difficult every day, every moment to sit and study Torah. You have other things on your mind. So, yes, of course, a person, when we need to go to work, is where you have to go to work. Whatever we need to do to eat, to drink, to help the children, to help the wife, and to play with the children, all it's important. But there's certain times in the day that you could have done studying Torah instead of doing something else, and that is one of the things that Hashem says, do not neglect my Torah. So a Beinoni is a person who does not violate that thing either. He does study Torah constantly. That is a Beinoni. It says, this is why Rabbi mistook himself for a Beinoni. Because knowing that a Beinoni is a person who doesn't even have one tiny bit of sin. Because if he does, he's a rasha, he's a wicked person. So therefore, Rabbi could have mistakenly say that he's a Beinoni. Later on, we'll understand why. What's the difference between this and a tzaddik? If he's doing everything right, what does it mean? What is a Beinoni? What is a tzaddik? Now in the footnotes, the Alter Rebbe says, as for it is written in the Zohar says that he who sins, he whose sins are few is classed as a righteous man who suffers. That's the statement that says in the Zohar. So this seems to be that here it says it's called a Beinani. And here in the Zohar it says that this is like a righteous person, righteous who suffers, if he has fewer sins. And here it says that even a Beinani is called wicked, it's not even a Beinani. So the Alter Rebbe says, that statement in the Zohar is not a conclusion of the Zohar. It is a question that Rav Amnuna asked Eliyahu. This is a query of Rav Amnuna to Eliyahu. Ava lefi tshuvas Eliyahu sham, pirush tzadik v'ralei, k'ma shekosav b'rai mehimne parshat botim d'leil. But according to Elijah's answer, the meaning of a righteous man who suffers is, as stated in Raya Mehemna in Parshas Mishpatim, quoted above that we just said, that the righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. And the Torah has 70 faces. So this is the end of today's shir. So we came with an opening, Alter Rebbe giving us the understanding what it means. First of all, we explain what is the Tanya. The Tanya gives us the eson of the strength of the neshama, in order to be able to know how to deal. It's called the Sefer Shabbanim. In the book of the Beinanim, we need to start to clarify what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, what is a Beinani. He brought the different contradictions and different explanations. And we ruled out that a Beinani is one that has any sin. Not even a sin of learning Torah. And tomorrow we're going to continue to explain what is the level of a tzaddik. So join us, Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow. Wishing you all a happy Hanukkah. And if anybody has the answer to the question of who came up with the name Tanya, I will be more than happy to hear. Thank you so much. Any questions?